On the 18th of December, which was a Monday, instead of calling it an no program specified draw, IRCC now calls it a general draw, or it sort of matches with the nomenclature that most of the people have for the draws anyway. So it's a general draw. Now, what does a general draw mean? General draw basically means all programs, all categories have been invited, right? However, this particular draw invited only 1,325 candidates, which basically means they're just trying to issue enough invitations to cover the PNPs. Now, I've said this many times before, and if you're watching, you obviously know this already. IRCC is under obligation to the provinces. So provincial nominee programs link their nominations. A lot of their streams and nominations are linked to the Express Entry. And the idea is to give people 600 points so that they can get their nomination. So IRCC must conduct the draws, otherwise the nominations do not mean anything. Under this obligation, IRCC did conduct a draw and they did invite 1,325 people. But the main criteria was to clear this. So they invited 1,325 people, not entirely bad, because at least there is a draw. Nowadays, just because there is a draw, we are happy. This is what IRCC has made us to believe now. The score was a very high of 542, of course, I mean, because mainly the PNPs were cleared and some very few candidates from the general category, in the sense like people who did not have nominations, those were also cleared for a score of 542. Then what happened is day number 2, which is Tuesday, on the 19th of December, IRCC had a back-to-back draw, Express Entry draw, but this time it was category specific, and this was expected. The minute at the start of the week, if IRCC is conducting an Express Entry draw, then you're pretty much pumped up and expecting that there should be a category-based draw. And that's what happened. They had a trade category draw inviting 1,000 candidates to apply for permanent residence. The score was 425. The previous draw happened a few months back. I think it was August or September, if I'm not wrong. Then also, they had invited candidates, score of 425. The scores remained the same. They've invited another 1,000 people. The big group of people that are in this particular knock codes or trade categories were your carpenters, plumbers, electricians, welders, about 10 knock codes that were included here. So these were the last draws. Last trade draw was here in August, as I was saying. Oh, and the score was not 425. My bad. It is for the transport category where I mixed up with. So last time the score was 388 because they actually invited 1,500 people. Now, when they chose to invite only 1,000 people in the current draw, the scores are on the higher side at 425. Then what happened was that on the very next day, again, the following day, December 20th, now this is third draw in the week. On Wednesday, they invited 670. They invited a total of 670 candidates, and the score was a 435. Now, again, if I go back to the number of draws that had happened earlier, the transport category draw had happened on 20th of September. 1,000 people were invited, and 435 was the score. So again, this time, 670 have been invited, and score was 435. It almost seems that they wanted to keep the score at 435. So they could have invited 700 people, they could have invited 750 people, they could have invited again 1,000 people, but they chose to invite only 670. So the 670 seemed a bit odd to me, as if it was a deliberate move to keep the score at 435. Now, 435, and in this transport occupations, there are not a lot of categories. I think about 10 categories come into transport occupations. But one of the biggest one here is the truck drivers. There has been so much of talk about the truck drivers occupation because earlier in the year, they announced the list of certificate of qualification. They first said truck drivers would be eligible. A lot of people then applied in Express Entry, claiming 50 points for certificate of qualification through their MELT program in Ontario. And then they made the clarification that truck drivers were not eligible for the certificate of qualification. There's a lot of confusion there. However, 435 for truck drivers, I won't say it's a brilliant score, but it still gives them a bit of a respite there. And then what happened is that they again conducted a draw on 21st of December, which was a Thursday. And this time they invited 400 candidates with the agriculture and agri-food occupations. There are only 3 knock codes there, one of them being a butcher. And this time the score was a low of 386. Now, last time they invited agri-food was in September as well, right? In September also they invited agri-food. That time they invited 600 candidates and the score was for 354. This time, they chose to invite only 400, So for the whole year, they have now invited 1,000 people under this category. The score was 386, which is the last Express Entry draw, which happened this week on Thursday. Now, really pumped up, hoping and thinking that Friday would be another draw because 5 and 5, maybe IRCC wanted to absolutely make a big bang and say, okay, hey, Express Entry, we are really finishing off the year with so many invitations, so many draws, etc. So there was no draw on Friday. Maybe you would see a healthcare draw, probably. But no, didn't see that. But then again, healthcare draw did happen, with a big number, 3,600 in October. And there have been multiple healthcare draws this year anyways. Yeah, it's not too bad on the healthcare side. The last score for healthcare has been 431. So with 3,600 invitations. Now, STEM category also has been covered in the sense like they did, invite 5,900 candidates. Previously, they had invited 500. So 6,400 specifically invited under the STEM category. So they pretty much have also covered that. Technically, if you actually see the way things have happened, they have pretty much covered all the categories, right? The French proficiency category, they have invited several candidates throughout the year, ever since the category-based draw started in July. STEM, earlier we did not see much activity, but thankfully they did make a draw and they conducted a big draw, which basically helped a lot of people who were stuck in that. After that, they have already drawn a couple of times now, trade occupations twice, healthcare, as I said, multiple times, agriculture and food twice, and then the transport category twice. So all categories have been taken into consideration. They have conducted draws for all categories, taking into account what their expected or anticipated quotas for invitations for this year was. Now, I know a lot of you get confused with the quotas of these draws, right? Because there was a Globe and Mail article which said STEM category would have 32% of the invitations. Well, the article was correct, and the number of 32% average, because we do not know the exact number as of right now. Only next year when the data is released, we will know. But they did not say 32% of the ITAs of the category based draws. They said of the total ITAs, 32% will probably go to STEM. Now, when we say of the total ITAs this year is more than 107,000. I was thinking based on the number of people, quotas, that you would have no more than 80,000 invitations. I was absolutely wrong there in terms of thinking how many invitations they will issue. They have gone out and issued 107,000. Actually, the number is more. I don't remember the exact as per the last count, but they have gone out and invited more than 107,000 candidates in the Express Entry pool. So out of this 107,000, when you say 32%, it's roughly 34,000 people who have been invited, or 34,000 profiles that have been invited are from STEM categories. Now, when you say 34,000, but only the ITAs were issued were only 6,400, again, we are not referring to only the category-based draws. We are referring to total invitations. Throughout the year, everybody has been receiving invitations, right? So they are saying out of this, 32 to 34% actually has gone out to the STEM categories. That's what they're talking about. They're not saying that they will issue category-based draws and that would be 34%. That is not what they're saying. Total invitations out of 107,000, the number of invitations that have gone out to STEM categories is roughly 34,000. That's what they're saying. And in my opinion, I'm absolutely certain that it actually is true. And that's what the number is. Yeah, they're absolutely fine with doing what they've done. At the end of the day, they have to cover a broad spectrum of different occupations. It's not only STEM. And with the way things are going in Canada, healthcare, trade, skilled trade, construction trades, those are continuing to be in high demand. And we expect that they will also, IRCC will continue to sort of make some big changes in there. This basically was the Express Entry, and let's move on. So in December itself, now they have conducted quite a few draws. They conducted within December itself. Now they have already invited 4, 5, 10, 11, 12, 13. If you actually see all the draws that have been conducted, they have almost invited 13, 14,000 people just this month in December itself. Now, obviously, we know there was a big gap this entry. Almost for 2 months, we did not see any draws happening. So, but this month itself, more than 14,000. I'm just doing a very rough calculation. Roughly 14,000 people have been invited only in this month. So they have pretty much balanced out. And as I said, throughout the year, they have invited roughly 107,000 people, or actually more than 107,000. So that also pretty much, tells you that the number of invitations from IRCC has not reduced. It actually is more than what I was thinking that they would, based on the number of quotas that they have. Guys, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. I wish you all the very best. Wish you a Merry Christmas and a very Happy New Year. Thank you and wish you all the best.